Servus, ich heiße Aracely, ich komme aus den USA, aber jetzt wohne ich in München. Hello, my name is Aracely, I'm from the US, but now I live in Munich, and I've been here 4 months, so I thought it would be kind of time to share what my experience has been learning the language, and I will be making other videos on what it's like to live in Germany. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. I will have timestamps for today's video so you guys can skip around if things are boring for you. So let's get started with today's video. So a little background on what it's been like just learning languages for me in the past and how I got to learning German. So my first language was Spanish. I grew up in a Mexican household, but
Estamos en línea a ver a Camilo en Zurich.
But I grew up in the US, so I also had to learn English, and I then had to pick a language to learn in school because in the US you're told to pick a language for a few years to learn, and I chose French because I thought it was a nice third language to know, and I thought French was a good transition language. So I studied French for 7 years, and then I also studied Latin in middle school for a little bit, and I thought I was good at learning new languages and taking it head on, but I then went to university and I picked a new language to learn. I chose German, and I knew I wanted to study abroad, so I wanted to go on our Salzburg, Austria program that we have at University of Portland. And we actually have like a small campus in Salzburg, and I thought that was really cool. So I chose German, studied it for a year before actually going abroad. And then I went abroad, I got to speak with locals and test out my language learning in person. So I was really confident with the language. And then I went 4 years without learning any German or studying German, and then I graduated college and I joined Intel, and Intel is a global company, so I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to move to another country through Intel, and I ended up picking Germany, and I was like, okay, now I need to get back into German, but I thought that I had retained a lot of my German, but because I didn't practice it often or at all, I had forgotten most of it. So I got here and my confidence just took a huge hit. It was just like, I know this, like I know this, it's in my brain somewhere, but I cannot recall it. And I just felt like I was starting from zero, and there's a lot of frustration with learning the language. And I found that the biggest tip anyone can have when learning a new language is it's never going to be perfect. Just try and speak it, practice it, be okay with making mistakes and sounding dumb or feeling dumb. Like, those are all things that me as a very type A personality perfectionist does not like to hear. I don't like doing things unless I know I'm like, okay, this is going to work, this is going to be smooth. And no, it was definitely not. So I've slowly been transitioning into that mentality of like, it's okay if I make mistakes and stumble on my words and the accent's not there, like that's fine. Yeah, it's been a challenge. All of my teammates speak German. Everyone at the office speaks German. Like, no one really speaks English if they don't have to. Even though we're a global company, our headquarters are in the US, we're an American company, people prefer to speak German here. I've definitely noticed that in meetings, everyone will be speaking in like really fast-paced German. They're all like speaking over each other, and then I join the meeting and it's quickly like, oh, okay, like let's just speak slower, like transition to English if she wants to. And I always feel that guilt of like, darn, like everyone has to speak English because I'm in the meeting. And so I've definitely been trying my best to speak with my teammates in German as much as possible, like small talk at least at the beginning of a meeting, or I try to write my emails in German if it's simple things, simple messages on Teams. And then I went to Austria and Switzerland, and it was completely different dialects. I mean, in Switzerland they also speak French, and it's very very different from Munich German. So Also in Munich, in Bavaria, they have the very popular Bavarian dialect, especially with older generations have noticed. Like my manager, he speaks Bavarian, and I don't know the proper term for it. Some of my teammates say Bavarianish, but it's just a Bavarian dialect, and it's almost like its own language. Yeah, like instead of zwei, they say zwo, and things like that. And yeah, it's been a challenge for sure living in Munich and learning German, but I think it's exciting that they all have their own way of saying things in depending what region you go to. And similar to Spanish, right? Like Mexican Spanish is different from Spain Spanish, different from maybe Puerto Rican Spanish. So I definitely understand that languages have different dialects depending what region you go to. And I think that's important if you're going to visit a country that speaks the language you're learning, and just being aware of that so you're not caught off guard. So let's get into resources now that I've actually been using, and I won't be sharing a full routine on what I've been doing, exactly like daily, weekly, etc. If you guys are interested in something like that, I can make it a separate video. But for today's video, I kind of just want to share what I've been using to learn German and different modes of learning. So number one is Lingoda, and this is not an ad, it's not sponsored. I'm not big enough to be sponsored by them, to be honest. I learned about Lingoda through YouTube ads, but I've actually been recommended to use Lingoda through my coworker. He is from South Africa and moved to Munich as well, and he's been learning German for 5 years through Lingoda, and he loves it. And so I took a stab at it, and I actually really like it. I like the flexibility. I think that's the biggest thing about it that I love, is that I can have a class at 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. or 6 p.m. Like, it's so flexible. So depending on my schedule, like if I have work conferences and I won't be back to my hotel room until 10 p.m., then that works. Or if I have early meetings, then I can take one at 7 p.m., stuff like that. So I really love the flexibility. That's, I think, the biggest thing. Number two is podcasts. And I found this one podcast in particular, Coffee Break German. I love it. I love how it's like an interview, radio show style podcast. It's really good. Duolingo is another easy one that you've probably heard of, but I like that you can also do like a little session on Duolingo when maybe you're commuting to work, if you're taking the train. And another one that I personally like is German music. And when I'm working, I like to have music that's very chill and low key. And so I found that if I listen to slow German music, like maybe indie music, when it's a lot more chill, I can actually listen to the words subconsciously, but it's really nice and it's peaceful, and I also get to hear maybe German in a different speed and a different perspective. And I like this one artist in particular. Her name is Madeline Yuno, and I'll put her name on the screen because she's really good. I love her. Yeah, so those are the top 4, I would say. And then another one, reading books in German, and in particular children's books. So we actually have these like small children's books, and they are pretty simple, but they are kind of lengthy in terms of content. So I really like these. And then I have some back there on my bookshelf that you can see. And yeah, I think children's books are good because they're the type of German that children are learning, and you know, they're starting from 0 as well. So I think that's a good way to do it. And then another thing is to do no English days, and we haven't quite committed to this in full transparency, but we do try to say things now in German more often, sentences, or like even simple words like left or right, like we'll say that in German with each other, and I think that's been helping. And another tip I have is to use DeepL, Deep Learning Translator, instead of Google Translate. DeepL is amazing. I love using it because it gives you different options for the translation. Instead of just like Google Translate, it'll give you one option, right? So I like that. And you can also upload documents and it'll translate them. So that's one thing about actually moving here, is having to learn the language out of order. So like sometimes we'll have to learn really advanced German for maybe our rental lease, or like their washing machine settings, and that's when we have to really learn advanced German, even though we're maybe in an A or B level German. And another tip I have is when you're getting around Germany specifically, like if you actually live in a German-speaking country, start with German. Do not start with English when speaking to someone. That is the number one thing Patrick and I practice, is when we have a question maybe at a grocery store, department store, and we're like, hey, where's this? Or checking out at the register, having that conversation in German is going to be so much more helpful to you in the long run than starting out in English and hoping that the other person speaks English. And I think it's also a sign of respect to try your best to speak with the locals in their native language. And sometimes they will switch to English when they see you're struggling, or they actually want to practice their English. So we went to a car dealership to go look at some cars, and the salesman, he actually was not confident in his English, but he knew we were struggling because we weren't advanced enough to talk about cars in German, and he switched to English, and he was like, sorry, it's not perfect. And it was perfect English, but he also at the end of the conversation was like, oh, I'm glad I got to practice my English and, you know, keep that refreshed or fresh in my memory. And yeah, I think it's just when you show that you're trying, they're going to be more likely to help you as well. So yeah, speak in their language right off the bat, try your best, fumble through your sentence, get by through explaining. Maybe if you don't know the exact word, just try to explain what you mean or what you're actually intending to say, and that goes a lot more smoother, and it helps you also learn that word or that phrase that they then say. So that's one of my biggest tips, is speak the native language of where you're going. To be honest, most of my coworkers, when I go to conferences or larger events, I definitely only hear German. I don't hear English really. They prefer to speak German, and you're obviously going to go with a language that you're most comfortable with. So I've been very accepting of that and trying my best to speak German instead of being like, hey, can we switch to English? Like, I will try my best to stick with German as long as I can in the conversation. Yeah, it's all about trying, making mistakes. It will never be perfect, so don't sweat it, don't get stressed about it. Just know that if it were easy, everyone would speak a million languages. So it's just a matter of trying and putting in the effort, and you'll be fine. So that is it for today's video. I really hope it was helpful in some way, or it at least motivated you. Yeah, just thank you so much for sticking around, and there will be many more Munich, Germany videos coming very soon. I'm really excited to share them with you, share my life with you. And if you guys want to chat with me on Instagram, it's in the description box below, or comment down below. I'd love to just chat with you guys. And if you have any tips for me about just living in Germany, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Tschüss!